Hello, and welcome back to The Crime Reel. For today's true crime narration, we shall be visiting Chicago, Illinois, to look at the life of Marc Thompson. Marc was born in 1953. He was an intelligent man who completed an undergraduate degree at Berkeley and went on to complete graduate work at Stanford. He became a successful investment executive at a grain futures firm. At the height of his success in the late 90s, he was making over $1 million per year. He married and went on to have 3 children, living in an expensive home overlooking Lake Michigan. However, after a few years his marriage sadly broke down. The couple went through a messy divorce that became incredibly expensive. His financial success crumbled. Marc lost his biggest client and soon after lost his job. By the end of the 1990s, Marc was on the verge of bankruptcy. In order to try to regain his past wealth, he started to borrow heavily from friends and business associates, some of whom lent him 6-figure sums. At some point during 2000, Marc created an overseas bank account in an attempt to hide money from both his ex-wife and creditors. In September of that year, Marc filed an insurance claim stating that his house had been burgled. He claimed $50,000 for the theft of his computer equipment and other belongings and was promptly paid out by his insurance company. Marc continued to struggle with his level of debt. In June 2001, he convinced his elderly mother, Carmen Thompson, to sell her home in California and move to live with him in Chicago. The proceeds of the sale of the house were put into Carmen's bank account, to which Marc had access. This money was soon spent, and Marc again became penniless. In early August 2002, Marc confided to those close to him that he was concerned about his mother, as she had said that she wanted to end her life. He also told his housekeeper that Carmen had been talking about burning the house down. On the 8th of August 2002, Marc took his mother to the emergency room for treatment to a burn to her shoulder. He told staff that she had fallen while cooking. 3 days later, on the 11th of August 2002, Marc had decided to take his 3 children to the cinema. The cinema was located at 600 North Michigan Avenue in Chicago, about a 20-minute drive from Marc and Carmen's home. Marc and his children left the house at around 6:15 p.m. They made a brief stop to buy cigarettes and a newspaper before arriving at the cinema just in time to see their movie, which was scheduled to start at 7:05 p.m. At 7:10 p.m, back at his house on North Paulina Street, one of Marc's neighbours noticed smoke coming from Marc's house. The neighbour immediately called the fire brigade. Firefighters were soon at the house and were able to extinguish the fire before it fully took hold. When the firefighters checked the property, they found that the upstairs had only sustained minimal smoke damage. The ground floor had smoke and a small amount of fire damage, but the basement had sustained extensive fire damage. While checking the basement, they found the body of Marc's mother, 90-year-old Carmen. She was lying face down on the floor, and it was later determined that she had died from smoke inhalation and carbon dioxide poisoning. When Marc arrived home to the scene of his burnt house and the news that his mother had died, he informed police that Carmen had recently been talking about ending her life and that she was taking multiple medications, including an antipsychotic drug. The fire investigator, Carmelita Wiley-Earls, found that the fire had started in the basement, approximately 4 feet from where Carmen's body was found. It was determined that lacquer and paint thinner had been splashed around the basement in order to accelerate the fire, the empty cans of which were found near Carmen's body. Satisfied with this version of events, the Cook County medical examiner ruled Carmen's death a suicide. It was determined that she had set the fire in order to kill herself, waiting for her son and grandchildren to be safely away from the house before doing so. Shortly after, Marc received insurance payouts from various policies, totaling between $600,000 and $700,000. However, there were many things that just didn't add up, and authorities decided to investigate further. They reviewed Marc's finances and discovered that at the time of the fire, he had accumulated somewhere in the region of $675,000 of debt. They also found that on the night of the fire, upon discovering that his mother had died, Marc's first phone call was to his insurance company to start the process of registering his claim. He left it until the following morning to call his sister to inform her of their mother's death. As the investigation continued, more unusual behaviour and discrepancies came to light. The layout of Marc's house was reviewed. The basement could only be accessed via a very steep set of stairs, which would have been virtually impossible for 90-year-old Carmen, who had certain mobility issues, to get down unaided. When neighbours were interviewed, they stated that Marc and his children had left the house at 7 p.m. that evening and not 6:15 p.m, which Marc had previously told the police. This was further backed up by Marc's youngest son, who said that they had missed the beginning of the film at the cinema. It was calculated that the family missed between 8 and 9 minutes of the film, and after allowing for trailers, this would put their arrival time at 7:30 and not 7:05. With a drive time of around 20 minutes from the house to the movie theatre, this would tie in with the neighbour's account of the time which Marc left the house. The investigation also revealed that Carmen had changed her will on the 4th of August 2002, just a week before her death. In the revised will, it stated that in the event of her death, she did not want an autopsy, and that when she died, she wanted to be cremated as soon as possible. Despite this, it was still established that Carmen had alcohol, Valium and Risperdal, which is an antipsychotic drug. These were all in her system at the time of her death. The Valium had been prescribed to Marc, not Carmen, and the Risperdal had been obtained by Marc on behalf of his mother from a doctor who had never actually examined her. Further questions were raised when it was noted that the area under Carmen's body had not been touched by flames, indicating that she had been lying face down when the fire started. More digging around uncovered that Marc had increased the value on his home insurance policy in December 2001, and also the value of his mother's life insurance policy in the weeks leading up to her death. In November 2002, 3 months after the fire, Marc transferred the majority of the insurance payout to a foreign account believed to be located in Curacao, which he had set up 2 years earlier when he was trying to hide money from his ex-wife and creditors. With this money hidden away, 6 months later he filed for bankruptcy in an attempt to have all of his debts cleared while still keeping the insurance money. With enough evidence in hand, Marc was arrested and charged. He was tried in federal court, where he maintained that it was his mother who had set the fire in order to end her life. He was found guilty of all of the 19 charges which were brought against him, including insurance fraud, bankruptcy fraud, and using arson to commit fraud. The federal prosecutors did not have the jurisdiction to bring charges of arson or murder. Nevertheless, he was sentenced to 190 years in federal prison and ordered to pay back the insurance money which he had received. Marc appealed both his conviction and sentence. These appeals were unsuccessful. He never showed any remorse for his crimes and was described by the judge as greedy, arrogant and lacking in any moral compass. He wanted an end to his financial troubles and planned for his dead mother to be his alibi. I've been unable to find whether he was subsequently tried for his mother's murder by the state attorney's office. However, it is believed, although unverified, that he died in prison in 2015. That concludes the story of the life of Marc Thompson. Thanks very much for listening to that story. Please add any comments down below. I'll be interested in reading them. Thanks very much for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. Trying to keep you true crimers entertained during this current situation. Just to let you know, if everything goes to plan, there'll be a new story on Saturday, usual time. Goodbye.